Yo, what's up guys, welcome back to another video. This is a reaction to the most dangerous jobs in human history, and I mean there's definitely dangerous jobs now, right? But you go back in time and there was less safety and they just didn't really care. You just basically have to work wherever you work to get a bit of money. And I'm sort of thinking of like coal mining and stuff, but obviously that's still a thing that does happen now. But just mining in general obviously was dangerous, but then if you go further back you've got the plague doctors, I forgot what they're called, but I mean they wore these suits that I think I've learned they didn't even protect them from catching the plague. It was just they thought it did, but it didn't. With this like the bird-looking beak suit, and stuff like that. But you had like chimney sweepers for kids. I remember learning about like kids used to have to work in chimneys to clean them. I'm thinking about that. I mean, firstly, like 7, 8-year-old kids, because obviously they were a lot smaller and they fit in. The idea that you'd make a kid do that in the first place is wild. But then I've got asthma. Like I would be screwed. Anyone would have troubles with it, but I would be screwed. Like a bit of dust, and that sets me off. My allergies go crazy, which isn't really my asthma, but goes hand in hand. I'm very weak when it comes to like dust or like fumes. So I'm going in a chimney. I'm probably dying in the chimney, which may have been quite a common thing. But yeah, many jobs like that. You look back on and it's like, yeah, the world was crazy. They did not have any rules in place at all. But yeah, we're going to check this video out and learn about, I guess, some of those plus other ones. And that's pretty much it. Links are also in the description to my Patreon where you can see reactions that I can't post to YouTube. But let's check this out and see some of these jobs and how dangerous they were.
These are some of the deadliest jobs in all of history. The first job on the list is the tin opener. What's that, you may be asking?
I've seen these before, but this just looks like what a diver would wear.
Okay, picture a dude opening a tin can, but the can is under 12,000 feet of water, and surrounded by explosives.
What?
Now, take that mental image and replace the tin can with a submarine. Okay, maybe the explanation could have been
Wait, what am I seeing?
slightly more clear. Basically, in World War I, submarines were really useful. Both sides would stuff their submarines full of secret codes and messages, knowing that more likely than not, if that submarine would be destroyed, then so would the contents of the machine. And that was mostly true. More often than not, the secret codes and messages locked inside submarines would stay there forever, completely unrecoverable. But that didn't stop both sides from trying, which is where these guys come in. The tin openers.
Jesus.
Their job was to try to break into these sunken submarines to get to the secrets inside. While I'm talking about this job, just keep in mind that this was during World War I. We didn't have crazy modern diving equipment or anything of the sort. Think of a diving suit as a metal tube that just happened to have oxygen inside of it. I mean, look at this dude. Does that look comfortable in any way? I don't think so. But the danger of this job wasn't just due to comfort, or even due to the suits as a matter of fact. Think about it this way. The submarines they were looking for were at the bottom of the ocean. How'd they end up there? Most of the time it's because they were blown up by mines. Yep, that's right. The submarines would often be in the middle of a minefield.
Jesus.
So even if you did every dang thing perfectly, your suit never malfunctioned and you made it all the way down, well, there's a good chance a random mine will decide, my time is now, and commit genocide on itself. Oh yeah, and one more thing I'd like for you to keep in mind. The way they got into these subs wasn't by just opening a door. Nah, that'd be too safe. The most common method to get into the subs was via explosive. Because why not detonate a powerful explosive in the middle of a minefield? Yeah, these dudes did not have the
Bro, this might be the worst job I've ever seen.
highest of survival rates, but they're nothing compared to some of the jobs coming up next. It only gets more deadly from here. Next up, we got the lime burners. To understand what a
I'm thinking, I bet they weren't even paid that good money either. Like, they probably got a decent wage for the time, but they've been doing it during the war. So I'd assume they probably didn't even get those benefits. They just got a little bit of extra money. That is horrifying.
Burner does. First, you need to understand what quicklime is. It's got a ton of uses. The main ones historically used are holding buildings up and burning people's eyes out.
Lovely.
So maybe those two functions have given you a small idea as to why it's so deadly. The role of lime burners was to put this stuff together inside of factories. But don't worry, quicklime isn't reactive or explosive in any way, unless it comes into contact with water. And I mean water in any form, like for example, sweat. Hey, did I mention that quicklime is created inside of a furnace at 1500 degrees Fahrenheit? Truly unfortunate. The situation a lot of the time would end up with the quicklime reacting to water in some way, mostly to the detriment to the worker. To get a truly good picture of what happens when you come into contact with it, allow me to read out the list of symptoms. Coughing, sneezing, and labored breathing to begin with. After that, it evolves. In this stage, it can burn holes in the nasal septum, which is the thing that separates your
What the fuck? This is wild. It's like 1,000 times more toxic than a bit of cocaine. I mean, that does destroy your septum eventually. This just does it in a much quicker time period, and I assume doesn't get you high.
nostrils. It can cause extreme abdominal pain and vomiting.
Oh,
Also,
my
just
days.
want to throw this in here. It can also produce enough heat to light things around it on fire. Quick public service announcement to any lime burners in the audience. Try not to touch quicklime. It's not beneficial to your health. Glad I could help. No need to thank me. There was one time a Roman general was fighting these dudes named the Characatani, who had managed to hide in caves that the Romans couldn't access. Instead of charging blindly into the caves and losing all of his men, the Roman general decided to use the old military strategy of flinging stuff at them until they surrender or die. In this case, the stuff was quicklime powder. The general had his men pile up large mounds of limestone dust at the entrance of the cave. The Characatani didn't think much of it at first, but the next day the wind blew the quicklime into the cave, and the Characatani began to suffer immensely,
Jesus.
choking on the dust as their eyes and throats were severely irritated. After 3 days of complete suffering, the Characatani surrendered. That's a pretty terrifying substance to work
Yeah.
with. You know another pretty terrifying substance to work with? That's right, military-grade explosives. Welcome to the wonderful career known as being a petardier. You heard the saying,
Goddamn.
hoisted by your own petard? That was about these dudes, the petardiers. Okay, I've been saying that word a lot, but what does it mean? Well, a petard is a cone-shaped thing full of explosive material. It was used often during wars, because when ransacking someone's castle, the main obstacle between you and their vast riches is often the giant walls. So to overcome said obstacle, some dude had the genius idea to create this thing, the petard. You fill it with explosive powder, attach it to a weak point in the wall, and light it. At that point, it's a mad dash to cover. This was one of the most dangerous parts of the job. Think about it. Petards aren't light. They often took like 4 guys to carry, and you're carrying it through an active battlefield towards an
my
enemy
days.
castle. The enemy knows how dangerous that thing is. So they're doing everything in their power to crack your skull, or to even set off the petard. If by some miracle you make it to the weak point in their castle wall, which I'd like to add is the most heavily defended, then you have to affix a live bomb to the wall. You stand there, light it, then sprint full speed in the other direction. The phrase from earlier, hoisted by your own petard, comes from the fact that being blown up by your own bomb was incredibly common.
Oh my
What an
days.
interesting profession. Next up, we got
Bro,
the
I'm so happy I wasn't born in these years, man. I really am. You just weren't given a chance, honestly. You really weren't. Unless you were born as a king or as a royal. Like, you're done. You are done for.
sappers. If you have claustrophobia, you would be a great fit for this job. That's because the sappers were miners, but not normal miners. These guys would only work during battles, tunneling underneath the battlefield in the hopes of getting to the enemy castle.
Jesus.
They would tunnel all the way under a battlefield towards the enemy castle, stone by stone. As they went, they would support the tunnel with wooden beams to prevent it from collapsing. Once they got there, they would just start removing the foundation stones to try to destroy the castle. Once they removed enough, they would light a fire and burn down the wooden timbers holding up the tunnel, then sprint out of there as the tunnel collapsed. These guys were actually some of the most effective fighters on the whole battlefield.
What?
But maybe you can see where some of the danger lay.
Yeah.
So many times the tunnel would just collapse on the sappers, crushing them in tons of dirt and rock.
Oh, man.
Even when the tunnels didn't collapse, there were plenty of other threats. First of all, if the enemy found your tunnel, you're definitely screwed, since there's literally no escape. Second, enemy sappers are also a threat. Both sides knew how useful this tactic was, so they both used sappers. And on occasion, these miners would discover each other.
Well, they'd come across.
And at that point,
They would just come across each other. What are the chances in that?
battle was bloody. Most often, being discovered meant death for the sappers, as enemies would just enter the tunnels and kill them. Turns out that this was actually the best and maybe only defense against them. Yeah, being a sapper was insanely deadly, but unfortunately miners weren't very well respected in the military. So not only did they die incredibly often, they also weren't held in high esteem. Yeah, go dig your tunnel, dirt boy. Being a sapper sounds pretty terrible, but at least it wasn't as horrifying as this next one.
Oh god.
Welcome to the wonderful world of being a plague body collector.
Okay.
Europe.
Now we get into the tasty stuff. This is where it gets even more funky.
Mid 1300s. The Black Plague hits the continent like a truck, filled with plague. People were dying by the thousands. The thousands of thousands, otherwise known as the millions. As bodies piled up in streets and houses, the job of moving those bodies out of cities fell upon one group of people. A heroic bunch, known as the body collectors.
Poor fuckers, man.
And yes, it's exactly as glamorous as it sounds. The job consisted of breaking into dead people's homes, checking for said dead people, grabbing the corpses, loading them onto a cart, and then moving on to the next house. There were a shit ton of bodies to collect during the Black Plague. Ironically, body collection was one of the most stable careers around that time because everyone was dying to plague. It was a bit of a trend. Unfortunately for the body collectors, it wasn't all sunshine and rainbows. Who knew, right? The funny thing about the Black Plague was that it spreads insanely fast and efficiently. And if you're coming into contact with bodies all day, things don't look too good for your survival odds. A ton of body collectors would die from the plague. And let me tell you, it was not pretty. The main sign of the bubonic plague was buboes. The victim would be covered in these black spots that were filled with pus, and that would occasionally explode. As the plague attacked your body and your condition reached critical levels, you would start to cough blood before a final seizure would take you down. So yeah, pretty lovely stuff. One of the main strategies of the body collectors was known as corpse lasagna, whereby they dug an incredibly deep pit.
Corpse lasagna, flipping hell.
Then they'll throw corpses into said pit, then throw dirt on them. Then they'd add more corpses, and so on until the pit is filled.
Just need a little bit of sprinkle of cheese and you're loving it.
And they do it again. Hence the name,
my days.
lasagna. Despite all the horrors, being a body collector was a very desired job. Not for the safety and fun of the job itself, but because those dudes got paid so much. I mean, you'd have to be paid a ton to do a job with a 90% chance of horrifying death. Yeah, being a body collector was a cruel and thankless job. But you know what? At least people weren't actively trying to kill you. Which unfortunately was the case with our next job. Okay, maybe they weren't trying to kill you specifically, but maybe indirectly. That's because our next job is food taster. This was a person that would be assigned to someone who might be the target of assassinations. Before
This is still a job now, isn't it? You still have like food tasters for like the US president or like the royal families and stuff like this. I feel like you still have these people. It's just, I guess they're less likely to be poisoned nowadays because I guess people just have less reasons to poison people, you know? Back in these times, I guess people had a lot more enemies. I say that, I feel like people now have more enemies, but there's just, we're in a safer world where that's just not really going to happen. But I guess tasters do still get poisoned. If you're a taster in Russia, I bet that's probably the worst place to be a food taster, to be honest.
every meal, the food taster would, guess what? Taste a bit of said person's food. The point was to see if the food was poisoned. And if it was, things wouldn't fare too well for the food taster. If an assassin wanted to get to the king, they'd have to get through his food taster first. Which wasn't that hard because they're just dudes, and those dudes died a lot. Kings would burn through food tasters like crazy. There was one interesting story involving Cleopatra and a food taster. Cleo and Mark Antony were in a relationship, but a bit of a sketchy one. You know, the classic troubles new couples go through. She was a bit of a maniac. He was worried she wanted to kill him. Little stuff like that. But never fear, because dearest Cleo had a solution to his worries. See, Mark Antony had a food taster. And remember, food tasters aren't rich, so therefore they don't matter. Cleo told Mark to put a flower from her garland into his drink, then told him to drink it. He was about to do it, but then Cleo told him to stop, and got his food taster to drink it instead. The food taster didn't really have a choice in the matter, and he took a drink. Within minutes, he was dead. Cleo then goes, "If I wanted to kill you, I could have." Now, this was supposed to be a story about how cool Cleopatra is, but I can't help but feel bad for this food taster and all the others that came before him. It's just pretty messed up, you know? He was used just as a prop. That shows how dangerous their jobs were. They could be killed at a moment's notice. So, those were some of the worst jobs in human history.
You know what? Yeah, flipping out. I mean, I thought chimney sweeping was bad. These might definitely be, these are definitely up there, comparable. To be fair, chimney sweeping's bad. I mean, these ones are more so like just in the line of fire sort of jobs. Being a chimney sweeper is just one that's just sort of waiting to kill you in a sense. But I mean, yeah, I mean they're all bad. It's just thank God we're not in a world where this stuff's the case. What was this comment? Good video. Keep up my. What the fuck? Sam took a break to complete college. Is that what he's done? Is Sam and Nello in college? Is that what he's doing now? Or is this just a made up comment? And several more people began their quest to inform the people of weird and niche history. I mean, yeah, you've definitely seen an explosion of these sorts of channels, but I'm not going to complain, man. I've been reacting to loads of them and I've been enjoying it. But hopefully you enjoyed this reaction. Let me know on some of these jobs. Do you reckon there's any jobs currently in this day and age that you could compare to any of these? I'm just trying to think. There's got to be some jobs that it is like extreme, even like in this current day, but it's just such a rare job you don't hear about it. I know diving is like a hard job. I mean, like just diving in like just the ocean in general, it definitely isn't an easy job, but that's comparable to the first one. But the difference is they had none of the gear in the first one, plus you're diving in a situation where there's explosives and stuff. So I mean, yeah, I don't know, but let me know your thoughts on this, and until next time, peace.